decorate the Christmas tree.
Kia ora tātou, this is Sage Forest. In case you haven't noticed, it is Christmas and I've been enjoying driving around at night and having a look at some of the little Christmas houses that we have here in Golden Bay and our Christmas decorations up. But I just learned something recently about Christmas decorations, and that is that there's a whole unexpected origin of Christmas decorations. I hope I'm introducing this correctly. Graham Forskett is the person with the information on where the origins of Christmas decorations come from. Welcome, Graham.
Yeah, thanks, Sage.
Where should we begin?
Well, we can go back before the time of Jesus, and it's well known, and check this online, that a number of cultures had this very similar story to Jesus and the 12-fold, which is sort of like his council, how he arranged his council. And the geometries, or the shapes that are now Christmas decorations, were called sacred geometry, and that's how the temples and the churches were built. They were designed around the geometries. And this is like the Platonic solids and Pythagoras and so forth. And nowadays you can even buy a little app. There's an app which is called the Bliss Tuner, which will show you in real time that if you're able to get into that state of pure meditation where there's no random thoughts or thinking, where you're in that blissful state, then your heart at that time is generating waveforms away from you, energy fields away from you, based on the mathematical formula for most of sacred geometry, which is called the golden ratio, or the golden mean, which is where the saying comes from, a heart of gold.
How is that measured, Graham? How do you measure heart waves?
Yes, in that sense. So this app has a little kind of tuning device, just like a microphone in a sense, but it's picking up the electromagnetic field from your heart, and you're watching a graph, like an amplitude graph on a screen in real time. So you're watching your own heart unfolding as a graph, amplitude graph in real time, and then when you've got to that state of bliss meditation, you can take a snapshot of it and get your ruler out and measure it. And those amplitude, the heights of each of the waves and the amplitude are in what they know as golden ratio.
Yeah, the golden ratio. So we'll explain what that is, but I'm just remembering from doing some sound healing, working with the voice, that I was told that a lot of where the choirs were placed in church amplified the golden ratio frequencies as well. So just explain really what those are.
Well, if you build a shape which is based on the golden ratio, and a lot of dome shapes and temple shapes, even Stonehenge itself, they're built on using that as the template. So what goes on inside there is amplified and brings out what they call a harmonic resonance. So that's why dome-shaped buildings are good for meditation, for example, and when toning and so forth. Then the harmonics, which are bouncing around the room, the ones that are based on golden ratio, major and minor sixths, those ones have the purest tones. They sound the best. They're the closest to a sine tone.
Okay.
No distorted harmonics.
So my understanding of what the golden ratio or the frequencies involved there is, I know 3, 5, and 8K, and so that's part of the mathematics that's involved in the Nautilus shell, the
Fibonacci series.
Fibonacci,
Yes.
Yeah.
That's correct. You really have to get out beyond 8 to get the golden ratio. If you're back at 3, then that's a third. So
it's adding them up. So it's 3 and 5 are 8, and
if
5
you go
and
out
8.
in that progression of adding one after the other, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, etc., then the further out you go along there, the closer and closer and closer and closer you're getting to the exact golden ratio.
Okay. So back to the Christmas decorations.
So originally, the shapes, like in Plato and so forth, the schools that you would go to in Egypt as well, they would be teaching these shapes because they would want their city planning, their town planning, their architecture, their layout, their buildings, and so forth, to be built around these geometries. It would be like that's the best way to catch the chi of the Earth energy grids. It's the best feedback you can get by walking around the buildings and being inside them and so forth. You would be also getting the feedback of that golden ratio as an energy field, which is the template of nature, so it's like being in nature. So there's lots of reasons to use those shapes, and eventually what happens, of course, in the Western world anyway, that what the Masons and that knew as a sacred science became eventually plundered, I guess, into a money-making venture at Christmas.
Expand.
Well, what was truth become, the truth had been lost as to the value of them and the application of them, like buildings and that these days, randomly sized in shapes. In music, you've got a chord, for example, 3 notes. That's length, width, and height. So the chord that you play has a certain tone, and a certain chord would be you'd hear in a horror movie, and another chord would be blissful sounding. If you made a room in the chord wavelengths of the horror movie sounds, if that was your room, every time you went into it, you would not feel that great. So the science of shape and size was lost, and it was basically why geometry is called sacred, because that was, that had everything to do with emotional and psychological balance, as well as just aesthetics and so forth.
Nice thing to consider when you're building your house and building a room. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of builders now that understand that and are bringing it back in different ways. And of course, the material is important. That like natural materials as opposed to metal.
Well, that feels like a bit of a background. We're looking at Christmas decorations and the shapes and how they came from ancient understanding of sacred geometry, understanding or intuition for. And so what sort of shapes are you talking about?
Well, up until about 1987, they had crystallology was sort of already mapped and defined. So it was based on cubes and what they call tetrahedrons or triangles. And 1987, the initial discoveries were made of crystals that were based on pentagons. And the golden ratio is found in pentagon-shaped crystals. So because they already had they had it mapped what a crystal was, the pentagon crystal didn't actually fit that criteria exactly, so they had to call it something else. They began calling it a quasi-crystal. The beauty of a quasi-crystal is they're all based on the golden ratio, which is, as I was mentioning, is what our heart frequency cascade is when we're feeling love and meditating. So even though they're not officially called crystals, there was an era back a long time ago where the word Christ, crystallization, the word Christ and Krishna come from the word crystal. And Plato and Pythagoras both, and other cultures as well, that the fivefold or the golden ratio crystal is the one that they use for the ether, whereas the other ones, the cube and the triangular pyramids and so forth, that's what different states of matter are.
What about the star shape?
The star is like a flat 2D surface, generally, and you have to combine stars and put them point to point and build them up into a volume. It has to have a volume inside it. So, for example, like a soccer ball, the the simplest golden ratio shape is called a dodecahedron, and that has 12 pentagonal faces like panels on a soccer ball, 12 pentagonal panels. And therefore you have, in the east, you have a 12-lotused heart chakra. So that's a symbol of what the actual energy looks like when it's omnidirectionally radiating out from your heart. It's creating, if you were to photograph it and take a snapshot, you would see this dodecahedral sort of waveform heading outwards from your heart.
I'm really curious about this. I'm finding it hard to get a picture. Actually.
I should have brought one in.
You should have brought one in. Okay, well,
of them.
actually, people could, because you've got, is it called Starship Studios here in Golden Bay?
Yes, that's at 96 Commercial Street. But my website has an enormous amount of information on it.
Yeah.
Enormous amount.
What is your website?
www.unifiedfractalfield, one word, unifiedfractalfield.com.
Is this sort of resonant heart frequency thing, is this why we put up Christmas decorations?
I can only answer that by saying that not only does our heart generate and our mind in the alpha, theta, delta brainwave states generate golden ratios, but also our anatomy. This is well known. The archetype of beauty is golden ratio, but also the lengths of our knuckles and so forth, and our fingers, and then our arms and so forth. So when we want to see a resonance, we want to have a feedback. So I imagine that the Christmas decorations with the 5-pointed star at the top and so forth are almost subconscious ways for people to sort of tap into this time of year, because this time of year is the strongest few days of the year. From the 18th of December through to the 22nd or 23rd, the Earth itself orbiting the Sun, the Earth itself and the Sun have a direct alignment to the galactic centre, to the Milky Way galactic centre. That only happens these few days, really, each year, or in 6 months opposite as well.
And it doesn't matter where on the planet you are.
It doesn't matter where on the planet. The galactic centre is a long way away in the sense of light years, 25,000 light years away. But if you wanted to do a hop, skip and jump in a straight line from the Earth through the Sun to the galactic centre, you would have to wait until the 18th of December to do it.
If I wanted to leap to the centre of the galaxy,
Yes,
I have to wait
if
till
you
the
want,
18th of December.
yes, in the sense that, like in a hop, skip and jump, you take a few steps. So you're on the Earth and you have to wait until the Earth gets, when you're looking outwards from the Earth, you're looking through the Sun.
Okay, yeah.
And behind you is the galactic centre. So on the 18th of December, you could do a hop, skip and jump from the Earth to the Sun, then a big jump to the galactic centre. In mythology, the Mayan calendar and so forth, what they call the central spiritual sun in the East, they're all talking about the galactic centre, which, by the way, wasn't really plotted or pinpointed accurately astrophysically until about 1937. So most spiritual teachings before that era didn't know where the central spiritual sun was. And it was only in astronomy, 1937 was that actually pinpointed. So what was symbol before that became actual.
Why is that important?
Because for example, like the United Nations on Earth has representatives from all the countries and all the nations in a galactic-wide framework where advanced civilizations, and we know they're there, the Pleiadians, the Sirians, they're in the history from ancient cultures. So advanced societies on different planets and different star systems, they would go to their United Nations, they'd all go to the sort of central place where it was sort of easiest to get to, the sort of like the centre of the town council building. That's why it's important, is that's where the ongoing pulsations of inspiration or high dimensional, you call it that, the Mayan calendar call it a galactic wave coming from the centre of the galaxy, which is changing the structure of matter and consciousness in the whole solar system. So in a sense, it's the most important few days as far as where the Earth is going. And you can feel it walking around town and so forth. those few days are pretty sort of active. It's all tied up with the Christmas event, which probably hides, the fact that it is another event that is taking place, which is broader in scope than a Christmas Day sort of thing.
Listening to Fresh FM, I'm Sage Forrest, and I'm speaking with Graham Forsgate, who's a knowledgeable fellow on sacred geometry, trying to get to the root of why we decorate things at Christmas, in a way, or the shapes that we use and the energy of the time.
Another aspect is like what they call the Tree of Life, which is sort of like a Kabbalistic, although the Tree of Life is in a lot of ancient cultures as well. So you're decorating this tree. The Tree of Life is, in the Kabbalah, has 10 spheres placed up this tree. There's a hidden 11th. And so each one of these spheres up this Tree of Life is where you'd put your decorations, as it were, with the 5-pointed star at the top, because that connects it all together.
That's sweet.
Major cities have been designed in sacred geometry, like Prague is one example, and the Rosslyn Chapel in France. This was all like in the 14th and 15th century, where
is that an age of enlightenment?
Yes, it all came out of the mystics of the era, or even a bit before that, in the 11th and 12th centuries, when a reboot of the King Arthur story from the 6th century sort of was written by the mystics of that era, and Merlin and the woman behind Merlin, the Mists of Avalon story. It was the woman that were bringing it forward, prompting Merlin to build this 12-fold structure, which we know is the sort of template of wholeness. So with Arthur and the 12, it's like a pattern that that is sort of pre-time, or it doesn't exist throughout all time. So if we, even now, if we can reboot our social construct in this pattern, which is the story, the guts, as it were, the message behind the Jesus and the 12 is to apply it rather than sort of just talk about it. So as to apply the principle as a social design construct.
I rather think that that's something that Jesus was doing in his life.
I am absolutely sure and positive about that. Yeah.
So it might be a little bit challenging for people to hear some of the stuff on Christmas. Interesting, you're talking about Jesus and the 12, and that there have been others.
Before that,
yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Horus, the Zoroaster, Osiris, Hercules, Odysseus, all had 12, broke their
disciples.
I don't know whether they call them disciples, but they divided their extended family into groups of 12, and they walked. Some of them walked on water, and the different things that are in the Jesus story are in these earlier stories as well.
How do you know this?
Well, I'm only taking the word of the historians. You can check it all out on Wikipedia, for example.
Must be true. You were saying that some of the cities that were built, 12th century, like Prague, were built around the sacred geometry?
Yes, exactly. And apparently if you go there, it has a really good sort of
good
feel
vibe
to it when you're in the in the Rosslyn Chapel as well.
Where's that?
In France.
Oh, that's right.
So that storyline was that New Zealand author, was it somebody Brown, who wrote the Da Vinci Code, which picked up on that story.
Dan Brown.
And so eventually when Tom Hanks finds whatever it was he was looking for,
the Holy Grail,
that was a piece of paper basically with the Fibonacci numbers on it. And the Holy Grail, as far as a cup goes, it's like a good shaped wine glass, more or less, is because that cup is chalice is a golden ratio shaped. So it's not the cup that's important, it's the shape that's important.
Now, Graham Forsgate, you are also involved with Luminate Festival, which employs some of the sacred geometry. Could you speak briefly about that, about the site layout and the intent of using that geometry?
Absolutely. Yes, the Jules and Rita, who are behind the project up there, have from the word go, been incredibly enthusiastic and thorough to design everything, including the layout of the zones, each zone itself, and the decor, and even the way that the social, the group that look after each zone. So that's all designed on this golden ratio principle as much as possible. So incredibly enthusiastic about being involved in that project.
And that physically is done by laying out from the central Tomo area, laying out in this kind of expanding spiral of the golden ratio, all the different zones on different points.
Yes, it's like a repeat of Stonehenge. Is in Stonehenge is basically, even though you've got 30 standing rocks, there's 10 basic ones. And that 10 is like two pentagon stars. And that from that you can spin inside that decagon 10-sided shape. You can spin in towards the centre, spiral in towards the centre, and build up your golden ratio spiral. So we laid out the decagon on the land, and then at each point of the decagon, at the correct distance in some cases, we were able to locate the other zones.
There's 5 different zones, isn't there, from the centre?
I think so, that's right.
It's the healing zone, the electronic zone, the tribal zone, life stage.
The trance zone, is it?
And the chill area, and the village market area.
Yeah. We're looking at it as a community in a sense that we're building it up in this 12-fold fashion. So all the crew know this. And there's a Sacred Geometry web page on their website that goes into it.
Illuminatefestival.co.nz. And yes, and you were talking about the 18th of December through to
about the 22nd. So it goes to the solstice.
And this thing about the heart frequency in this blissful state, it's all about bringing together people in one mind, in one state, in one love, for want of a better word. You're
talking about global coherence. I think you can get an app for that as well.
It's kind of funny.
The Princeton University are doing it as well. So what they're looking at is global coherence, and what they found is just before major events like Princess Diana and major earthquakes, they can see that there's a peak in the amplitude of the wave form when they've got sensors all in different places around the planet. That global coherence is something that is a real fact, real
measurable.
Princeton University global coherence. Look it up, and you'll see the details. Once that's understood, you can turn around and use it the other way around. You can then do large group meditations to focus on different things in different areas of the planet, and know that this group dynamic, can actually has a resonance which is provable.
Well, Jesus would be happy about that, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he sure would. Remembering Jesus is still around. Because
explain.
Well, these people from the past, Thoth and Jesus and Buddha, and they're immortal. They didn't come and go in one flash. The reason that they're remembered is because they've become immortal, and some of them have still decided to stay in the Earth's field. So as part of the ongoing group of teachers behind the scenes, as it were. Some can leave, of course, and go elsewhere. But
you're not talking about physical bodies.
Well, it depends, because, like, if you've heard of Babaji, there's no need for a physical body once you've transcended the physical. But when you're in your non-physical, there's still a form there. It's called a plasma, a magma, and this plasma, which is an etheric form. It's the best shape of it is, of course, golden ratio, because that's the shape of the ethers. So that shape radiates its own electromagnetic field, and as it's touching people that are in the environment, that can be felt, seen, experienced, and so forth. And that field, that plasma field of that person, whether it be Jesus or Buddha or Babaji, can at any second morph itself from a spherical energy shape into its pre-plasma biological shape. So it can morph itself into a human-looking shape if the interaction with the person expecting the interaction, wants to see a human figure, then that entity can make it look like a human figure. No need to, but can do.
Fascinating. I don't understand why you're still choosing human form yourself, Graham.
Well, there's lots of us who are here living through this era because of what the Mayan calendar indicated, was that we're finishing a long cycle. The planet is finishing a long cycle. And all the bodhisattvas, if you like, which means those that were, could choose to incarnate. All the bodhisattvas from all the different cultures around the planet throughout history are all incarnate here now, because the opportunity to finish up their cycle is right here, right now. And
then what?
Well, the galactic community is here waiting. There's so much information out there that the Pleiadians are here, the Arcturians are here, the Sirians are here. So the galactic community is here and waiting, ready for humanity to get to the next phase, to begin the next phase. So those that are ready to leave, that are integrated enough to be able to handle the complexity of entering a galactic-wide community, which that complexity is enormous, those that are ready to leave can actually go elsewhere and experience new apprenticeships or new areas that they'd like to explore.
Wow, that's really far out.
I've been doing it for 30 years. It doesn't seem far out anymore.
Yeah, you're in it. Just remind our listeners, Graham Forsgate, if you would, of your website and your studio.
The studio is in Golden Bay, and it's on the main street, Commercial Street at 96, open most of the time. The website, which has a massive amount of information, www.unifiedfractalfield.com. I do have another one, which is more for the kids, or a much simpler one, and that's called www.starkidsnewzealand.com.
And are you selling Christmas decorations, Graham?
I would make commissions, I think. I don't think I want to sell what I've made so far, but I would make commissions.
Graham Forsgate, thank you so much for sharing your very strange knowledge with us on Fresh FM.
Thank you very much, Sage, for the opportunity.